by the great sage Narada. Tatra, there, Varnita, narrated, Bhagavat Katha, preaching pertaining to the activities of the Lord. Mayam, onto me. Shushrusave, very eager to hear. Brahman, my dear Brahmana. Katneyena, fully. Achastum arhasi, kindly explain. Translation: My dear Brahmana, how did Narad Muni glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and what pastimes were described in that meeting? I am very eager to hear of them. Kindly explain fully about the glorification of the Lord. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam is the record of Bhagavad Katha, topics about pastimes of the Lord. What Vidura was anxious to hear from Maitreya can also hear Maitreya we can also hear 5,000 years later, provided we are very eager. So, we're reading from the fourth canto, chapter 13, text 5, and we see again how this translation is highlighting the importance of being anxious and and the desire to listen to and to the topics of Uttama Shloka Vartayat, the topics of Krishna consciousness. And we see that Bhagavatam, it's actually only after 9th, 10th canto we see that the pastimes of Krishna start. But before that, the most crucial segment, 90% of it actually is the glories of the devotees of the Lord. So there are pastimes of Maharaj Amrish, there are pastimes of Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruv Maharaj. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who has come to give Anarpita Charim Chirat Karunaiv Tirnau Kalau Samarpaitum Unnato Chvala Rasasva Bhakti Shriyam. Something which was never given before. Unnato Chvala Rasasva Bhakti Shriyam. But when Mahaprabhu would be in Tota Gopinath temple with Gadadhar Pandit, he wouldn't read the Rasa Panchadhyay, but he would read the pastimes of Prahlad Maharaj and Dhruv Maharaj over and over again and again. So this is highlighting the importance of not just being anxious to hear about Bhagavatam as in the literature, but also about person Bhagavatam, because we see that Srimad Bhagavatam itself has so many chapters on the glories of the devotees of the Lord. So we see that how Vidura over here, he's so anxious to hear more and more, and from past 6 months we were just discussing about Dhruv Maharaj's pastimes, and which are now concluding. So as far as listening to the topics of topics related to the devotees, it's actually they're actually sweeter than the pastimes of the Lord himself, because Krishna lifting the Govardhan hill, we might not be able to relate with it, or because of our conditioning, but pastimes about how Prabhupada at an age of 70 would just cross the ocean and just to fulfill his Guru Maharaj's desire, he would wander around the streets and would struggle, and just his faith in Krishna. A lot of people would share these experiences, that they, just like Alan Ginsberg, he said that he would not agree with Prabhupada whatever he would say, but when Prabhupada would be around him, he would just not have the potency to counteract Prabhupada. He was forced. Prabhupada's purity forced him to believe whatever Prabhupada was saying. So all these pastimes, which are rather recent and which are about great personalities who have faith in Krishna, who have love for God, these pastimes give us more faith towards God. These pastimes push us and pull us from our materialistic entanglement, and forces us to actually surrender to the Lord actually take up Krishna consciousness, actually chant our rounds. There was one devotee who locked himself up inside the room, and for 24 hours he was chanting. He took this vow that for 24 hours, or in fact, I've heard for 3 days, he will just chant. And after those 3 days, he said that before this experience, I think I had never chanted the holy names of the Lord. So these pastimes of devotees, these instances and these circumstances which we hear about devotees, Srila Radhanath Maharaj would say that reversals in life are a devotee's best friend, because they encourage one person, they encourage a person to surrender to the Lord with greater determination. And listening to the glories of Bhagavad, person Bhagavatam, we have a great opportunity today because it's the Vyas Puja of Srila Radhanath Maharaj. So I thought, we've been discussing about Dhruv Maharaj and the person Bhagavatam, Dhruv Maharaj. Uh, let's take this opportunity to have some brief discussions on the life story of Srila Radhanath Maharaj and what experiences he has been through, because these experiences will actually motivate us and encourage us to surrender to the Lord and be more determined in our own Krishna conscious journeys. So Srila Radhanath Maharaj was born in 1950s on 7th of December, which is today, according to the English calendar. According to the Hindu calendar, it was the Krishna Chaturdashi of this month, and so according to the English calendar, it's today, and we're celebrating it today in our temple. So he was born as an American Jew. His name was Richard Slavin, and his parents were not really religious, but they were spiritual. They were and when I say that they were spiritual, it's a very Gen Z way to actually say that, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. But it is actually that they had noble values, and his father was an exporter, the biggest exporter of I think it was Toyota. I don't remember the car company, but he was basically, Sri Radhanath Maharaj, he would help his father, Richard Slavin, then he would help his father with the car mechanics and stuff like that. So he was born in that era where the color discrimination was very prevalent, and when growing up, someone would call them weird habits, like he wouldn't like to eat. He would like to eat with his hands. He wouldn't like to eat on a dining table, but he would prefer to eat sitting on the floor. Is something which traditionally Indian households, you can see there's a common practice. So ultimately, it was settled that Richard can stand and have his dinner on the table. So he would do that. Once the family had gone out for a dinner, and everyone was sitting, and Richard's father, grandfather, everyone was there, and suddenly they saw that Richard, he got up. The waiter came to take the order, and Richard got up and he went and he ran outside the restaurant, and he went inside sat inside the car. When his grandfather followed him, seeing if Richard is all right, Richard said that person who was taking the order, he studies with me in the school, so I was really embarrassed to sit and give him orders and give him an order. So I was very hesitant, so I came back. And his grandfather, who was a Jew, who was a person of culture, he really liked that, and he encouraged it, and he consoled Richard. So we see that these sensitive tendencies of Maharaj, this behavior tells us that this person is not a normal human being, but there's some divine aspect to him. So when he was in his high school, he was also interested in wrestling, but once he had a shoulder injury, and after that, his he couldn't really participate in wrestling, but these were some of his childhood activities. And then when he went to college, I think it was Miami. He went to the college, and just after first semester, his friend Gary um, gave him a call that there's a common friend, and we want to travel around. We want to travel to Europe, and we don't have to be worried about finances, as he's supporting us. So they went on this trip. Richard was somehow able to convince his parents that he'll be back by the end of the semester, by the end of the holiday break, summer holiday break. And they went on, and the first night they camped in a tent, but and when they had gone to a stream to take their bath, um, all the money was stolen from the tent. So the friend who was actually sponsoring, he decided that he'll go back. But Gary and Richard, they thought that they will continue on their journey, and they'll move on as. So what they would do is that they would stop the car and they would ask that person where they're going, and they'll say that we're also going in the same direction, if they could give them a lift, and wherever the person would go, they would just. So that's how they decided that they'll have that trip. So they went on, and then there were different experiences. There were so rather Richard Slavin, he wanted to have this. He wanted to have a spiritual excursion. Uh, excursion. He wanted to have this spiritual excursion, and he wanted to. Um, he had a lot of questions because he grew up listening to Beatles, to songs of counterculture, but all of these songs actually made him feel more connected to God. Although he had very vague sense of God, because even in his lectures, Radhanath Maharaj says that either I could have become a complete atheist due to the circumstances, or I could have become a complete spiritualist, because the instances, for example, during and Martin Luther King, he really inspired Maharaj, because there was a procession, there was a rally by the people of color, and Maharaj was the only white person, and he was being cursed, and he was being abused, and thrown shoes on, uh, because he was the only white person who was supporting the apartheid movement, and was a part of the rally. So, and Maharaj would say that how could I live peacefully seeing that just down the blocks there are people in ghettos who are suffering just because of a different skin color. So these experiences were really they really had an impression. This upbringing really had an impression on Maharaj's heart, on Maharaj's heart, and he wanted to have a spiritual journey. Anyway, they traveled through. They reached Greece, and in Athens, they decided that they would sit there, spend their time meditating, and spending time doing religious spiritual activities. So there used to be so they had no money, so they would donate blood, and when they would donate blood, they would get some money, and Maharaj would play a harmonica. So they would do concerts, and they would get some money, and that's how they were able to get some money. But once it happened that a police inspector came and saw what Richard and Gary were doing, and then he confiscated all the money Richard and Gary had, and there Maharaj says that there went my musical career as a musician. So then after that they go to these nice caves, Maharaj would say, in Athens, and they would pray and they would meditate, and after weeks of meditation, he heard these three words: go to India. That was his inner calling, and he comes back to Gary, and he tells Gary that you won't believe what happened, and Gary said, you won't believe what happened to me today. and because Gary had a candle lit and it was sunset, the sun was setting, and Gary said, "You won't believe what happened today." So Richard said, "Tell me." So he said, "No, you won't believe." "No, I will believe you. Tell me." So he said, "I heard a voice." So Richard said, "What did that voice say?" "Go to Israel." And he said, "Go to where?" And Gary said, I told you wouldn't believe me." Richard said, "No, I believe you, but go to where?" He said, "Go to Israel." And Richard said that same voice asked me to go to India. And they were in a confusion because these they both of them were childhood friends, so they knew that they had to part ways. So they were both were sitting. The sun was setting. No one spoke a word for a couple of minutes. Then Richard broke the silence and he said that I'll be preparing for my journey and I'll be leaving tomorrow morning. So Gary and Richard part their ways, and Radhanath Swami, he travels. So he travels from Turkey to Iran, then to Afghanistan, and then to Pakistan, and then at in Pakistan all. And there used to be during that time there used to be this magic bus for hippies who would want to travel. This magic bus would go around places, and it was a journey for more than 6 months. Uh, and finally, Radhanath Maharaj, he lands up in Pakistan, and he has one way visa, and then he's walking on the no man's land between Pakistan and India. He's thinking about how what experience he'll have in India, because he had never met an Indian before and he had never tried Indian food. So he was there, and then uh, the officer on the border, the the officer asked for Maharaj's visa, for Maharaj's travel documents, and Richard excitedly gave all those documents, and he was praying that they don't ask him how much money he has, because he had 26 cents in six different currencies. And then that officer asked the most dreaded question, "How much money do you have?" And then he said he took out whatever he had in his chola, in his bag, and then the officer said that to enter India you at least need $200. So your entrance into this country is revoked. You can't come in. So he went back. So he pleaded, she wouldn't budge, and he went back. So he came again after a couple of hours, and he requested again, and more Maharaj was requesting, more she was getting angry. Uh, and then she said that we have enough beggars in India, we don't want one more. You go back. But Richard would again come back, and he would cry and he would weep in front of her until she got so angry that she asked the officers who pointed their guns on Maharaj's face and asked him to leave. So he was just sitting in the no man's land. He couldn't even go back because he had a one-time visa to Pakistan. So he was stuck in the no man's land. So after 6 hours, the shift changed, and the officer drove, and the next officer, she told that don't. She hinted towards Richard and said that don't let this person come in. So and then she drove away. This next officer, who was a middle-aged Sikh man, Sikh, the person who you see some communities that tie a turban. So this Sikh man, he Richard came to him and he requested to go to enter, but the Sikh guy told him that I was given orders from my superiors that I don't have that I shouldn't let you in. And Richard at that time, he just broke in tears, and he was crying, and Maharaj said that there were genuine tears, and he said that I have left everything I have I've left my college, I've left my parents, and I'm on my spiritual quest, and I've been on this journey of over 6 months, and I really want to see what your country is, what the spiritual experiences your country has to offer. and I promise someday I'll do something good for your country. And he was so much in tears that the Sikh guy got emotional, and he said sometimes a person should must do something, must do things not from his brain but from his heart. And he blessed Radhanath Swami. He placed his hand on his head and he said, I will allow you to enter India. And he stamped his passport and he welcomed him to India. And when Maharaj he came, he from Amritsar, he when it was almost the sun was setting, Maharaj said that Maharaj explains in his journey home lectures that every tree, every leaf he would see, every breeze of air he would experience, it would be so jubilant for him, and he would be he would be in so much ecstasy, just imagining about what what this divine land has to offer. So from Amritsar he goes to Delhi, and from Delhi he goes to so he on his way he's attending various yoga seminars, where he's meeting various saints and having different kind of experiences with different spiritualists, different yogis, Advaitians, everyone. So he's having these experiences, and then he goes to Rishikesh. Over there he meets some sages, saints, and then he decides to go on his venture to up in the hills in Himalayas, and he shares his experiences with the Naga Babas. And then his experiences with the Naga sadhus were that they would smoke hashish, and they would they would smoke and then they would offer it to the other person, and it would be an offense to not accept it. And so they would offer it to Richard, and Richard, who had now in Delhi, he had some experiences, and he had taken this vow that he would not eat meat and he would give up intoxication. Before coming to India, even during Greece, in his trip to Greece, Athens, he decided that he would quit smoking and he wouldn't indulge in illicit sex and intoxication. So they would offer Richard this ganja, and Richard would hesitate, and they would say, no, it's prasad, it's Lord Shiva's prasad, so you have to honor it. But he would, because he did not know a word of Hindi except Hindi nahi janta main, that's all he would know. So he would he saw Moni Babas. They would hold they would and they would put their hand on their mouth, and they would wave like this. That means they don't really speak. Moni sadhus are sadhus who don't speak. They take a vow of silence. So he would hesitate and he wouldn't accept ganja. And then these experiences with Naga Babas, Maharaj would say that he would just be meditating, and he would open his eyes and he would see one Baba who would rise above, and he would just would be in the middle of in the air. And it was a very normal sight for the other sadhus. They wouldn't even get surprised seeing sadhus like that, because there were sadhus who were in the middle in the air, and they would just meditate, and they would just do weird asanas, very complex poses, and all of that. So his experience um, in Himalaya were like that. And then he, long story short, how he comes to Mumbai for a yoga seminar, and then he was just taking a walk. He had some break, and he was just taking a walk, and he saw this big balloon and this big hoarding saying the Hare Krishna festival with His Divine Grace Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada and his American and European disciples. So Richard was very intrigued by the American and the European disciples. So he goes to Cross Maidan. He asks someone, where is Cross Maidan? It's just a couple of blocks down. So he goes to Cross Maidan, and he sees that this beautiful, colorful festival is happening, where around hundreds of people are gathered, and there are a lot of experiences happening. festivals happening. There was uh, there was a stall, Ask a Hare Krishna. There somewhere there was a big stage. He would recall, and he would see one lady with a harmonium. She would just be so much absorbed in her music, and she would just do kirtan. That was Yamuna Mataji, who would do kirtans during the afternoon and morning times. And there was this, and there was the bookstall, and Maharaj would have different pictures. So in Chandni Chowk, the famous shop in Delhi, he would he saw different posters of different deities: Durga, Shiva, Ganesha, Krishna. So he had some money. So he someone gave him some bakshish donation. So he had some money. So he got this photo of this uh, bluish complexion boy with a cow and a flute in his hand, but he didn't know who he was. But then in Cross Maidan, he saw this book, Krishna book, this beautiful Krishna book with the cover page of Krishna on it. And then Radhanath Maharaj recalled that it's the same personality whom he had the photo of. He would carry his photo all way along, and this he started reading this book, and then he would stand on the stall, and he started flipping through the pages. He read as much as he could, and then he got the first service. Giriraj Maharaj was there at that time. Giriraj Brahmachari. He so the first service Radhanath Swami got was he had to tie the Back to Godhead magazines with with the thread to the table table leg, because people were stealing Back to Godhead magazines. So that was the first service Radhanath Swami got, and so he was tying he was drill holes in the magazine, and he would tie them from the with the leg of the table, and then but the people were stealing the books anyway. So he would flip through the pages of Krishna, the Krishna book. Later in the evening, Prabhupada came, and he would give lectures, and there were thousands of people there in the Cross Maidan festival, and Maharaj was too shy to come in front. He was too cultured to come to uh, ask people to manage his way through the crowd and go in front to see Prabhupada. So he was but he saw Prabhupada doing some calling a brahmachari and asking and doing some pointing towards Maharaj's direction and saying something, and then that brahmachari comes all the way through the crowd to Maharaj and asks him and tells him that Prabhupada wants you to come on stage. And Radhana and Richard said that, how does Prabhupada know I'm here? And the brahmachari doesn't say anything, and he just drags Richard. And Richard was rather slim, so he was pretty draggable. So he was dragged onto the stage, and he was sitting right next to Prabhupada. So Prabhupada was sitting here, and Richard was sitting here, and Prabhupada would give classes, and he would smile, would look towards Richard, and he would smile. So 3 days went by, and then Prabhupada actually gifted the Krishna book, which Radhanath Swami so wanted to read, but he had no money to buy it. So Prabhupada gifted Krishna book to Radhanath Swami, and then Radhanath Swami he went. So he went back to Kathmandu, Himalayas, and he went to Kathmandu, and he was taking a walk there, and it started pouring, and he was walking through the paddy fields. So it's the paddy fields, it's all water, but there's this narrow lane. So he was walking through the narrow lane, and it started pouring. So he was looking for a shelter, because he had only one set of clothing. And then he saw a person with an umbrella, and Richard, he followed behind that person. And after 10-15 minutes of silent walking, that person wouldn't say a word, Richard wouldn't say a word, and just when it stopped pouring, Radhanath Swami realized that he had to go the other way. So he said thank you, and he left. And when he said thank you, the person with an umbrella, he turned around and he saw Richard, and his umbrella fell in inside into the paddy field, and he said, "Richard, you." And then Richard turned around and he said, "Gary, you." So Richard and Gary, they both met each other again, and they said that no one would ever believe this happened, because Gary was to go to Israel, and after around nearly a year, Richard and Gary, both of them met again in such an unexpected way. So they said, so Gary, who was with a couple of um, white travelers, he was enjoying himself, and Richard, who had now become a sadhu, um, he met someone in Rishikesh who came to him and said, "I was waiting for you to come, and now it's time that you give up this pant, and Maharaj would wear a turtleneck sweater. So it's time that you give this up and embrace the clothing of a sadhu." So Richard asks, "Who's a sadhu?" So a sadhu is a spiritual seeker, and Maharaj said that this is what I am, and then he was given a white cloth, a white piece of cloth, worn out cloth, and that's all he would wear. Richard said that you should live a life of a sadhu, and you should not you've come to India. This is the land of spiritual awakening. So uh, you be with me. I'll teach you how to become a sadhu. So they were on their way to Amarnath. So they because they heard, so in Kashi Vishwanath temple, Richard was praying to Lord Shiva to reveal his path, his spiritual journey, and they were on their way to Amarnath, and the train was so crowded. It was during the monsoon time that the train couldn't go further. So the train was on a halt for more than 24 hours, and it was so jam packed that no one that they were gasping for air. So they decided that it was more than 24 hours. They decided that they'll get off the train, they'll take a breath, and then they'll come back. So the train started moving, but it was so crowded that they were not able to get back into the train. So in the middle of nowhere, the train left, and in the middle of nowhere, they were just standing there. And Gary looked towards Richard, saying, "Now what?" And then Richard said, "I have no idea." They asked someone where they are, and they told him that this is Mathura, the birthplace of Krishna, and today is Janmashtami. So this local Brajvasi, he took Richard and Gary to Janbhumi, and Richard, who had heard so much about, who is now at this point, he had read the Krishna book and was so attracted to Krishna, he decided that he would spend extra 3 days in Vrindavan. He asked Gary to go to Amarnath, and Richard said that he would join Gary in Amarnath after 3 days. So after 3 days, when it was time to leave, he would sleep on the banks of Yamuna. One day he was just not able to get up, and there was a local Brajvasi who got him to the local hospital, and they found out that Radhanath Swami was down with typhoid, so he couldn't travel anywhere. So he was stuck in Vrindavan for nearly 7-8 days. So after 7-8 days, he completely fell in love with Vrindavan, and he realized that there's no point going to Amarnath, because Gary, who would be waiting for him, he would have left by now. So he was in Vrindavan, and he said that for the first time he felt that he was back home, and he met a lot of saints. He met Vishaka Sharan Baba, who Maharaj would say that he would draw parallels from his experiences with the Naga Babas and the sadhus in Vrindavan. He would see that these sadhus, they wouldn't torture themselves with the hardcore fasting which Naga Babas would do. They wouldn't eat for days. So these Babas, they would eat regular food, they would have regular meals, they would have regular sleeps. They weren't very austere, so to say. But then when they would talk about God and their realizations, and they said, Maharaj recalled that just when they would talk about Krishna, they would start weeping and they would cry for God, and Maharaj could see that the love they have for God, and the love which they have for Krishna is way much is way more sweeter than, and way much more it's much more intense than the encounters he had with the Naga Babas and the saints outside Vrindavan. So he decided that he'll never leave Vrindavan, and people in Vrindavan had embraced him, and he was they had just accepted him as a Brajbasi. And he would recall his experiences with Gansham Baba, who was in another sadhu, who would so Gansham Baba, who would meditate and would chant the glories of Krishna on the banks of Yamuna, and he desired that he wanted deities. So what he would do was he would write name of Radharani on mud, and he would just worship the name, and at the end of the day he would rub the name off. So one day when he was rubbing the name off, he saw something golden in color was buried in the ground. So he dug, and he found beautiful deities of Radha and Krishna, and on the base it was written the names of the deities were written Gopijana Vallabha, and he found these deities, and there was some Brajvasi who was kind enough to give him a locker, a shelf in their house, and he would serve Radha Gopijana Vallabha there. And so Radhanath Swami, he met Gansham Baba, and Gansham Baba was so cordial and so welcoming, although he himself had nothing, but he said, "Oh, you are Radha Gopijana Vallabha's guest, so please come." And he would feed Radhanath Swami Braj rotis, and so they had named Radhanath Maharaj Ratim Krishnadas, so they would call him Ratim Krishnadas in Vrindavan. So, Krishnadas, please come, you are Gopijana Vallabha's friend. And he would give Krishnadas these rotis. So 3-4 days passed, and Maharaj would take his meals, the Braj rotis there. And then one sadhu came to him and said, what kind of a sadhu you are? You are, because if you, Gansham is starving, and you so, this is so wrong of you. And Ratim Krishnadas, Maharaj didn't know what was going on. So this sadhu told him that actually Gansham, there's one Brajvasi who gives him these 3 rotis, and that's all he has in 3 days. That's all he has in the entire day. And since 3 days he's been fasting, because every time you go, he gives you the rotis. So next time when Krishnadas goes to Gansham offers these rotis, and Krishnadas says that no, you have it. And then Gansham says, no, you have it. You are Gopijana Vallabha's guest. And then he said, no, you haven't had anything since 3 days. These are your rotis, you have it. I've already had my lunch. So Gansham Baba, he was forcing Maharaj, no, I've had, you eat. I have more rotis. So Krishnadas would say, no, you don't, you show me the rotis. And he would say, no, there are there in the rotis are there in the locker, they're behind the deities. So no, you show me the rotis. And Gansham, he cried, because he did not have any more rotis. So seeing that compassion of Gansham Baba, Radhanath Swami, he accepted those rotis, and he took those rotis. Next day he would go 3 hours late than lunchtime, so that Gansham would eat his meals and then Maharaj would go. But then when he went, Gansham was still waiting with the rotis and said, Gopijana Vallabha, I have been waiting for you all day. Krishnadas, where were you? And he would feed the roti. It was time of winters, and Gansham had 1 blanket and Krishnadas had none. So in the night, Krishnadas was shivering, and in the morning he saw that there was a blanket on top of him, and Gansham Baba was laying next to him. So his heart broke. He was heartbroken to see that Gansham, so old, he had given his blanket to Radhanath Maharaj. So next day in the night, Maharaj was not really sleeping, but he saw that he could feel Gansham Baba putting the blanket on him. So he put the blanket on Gansham Baba again, but Gansham Baba again put the blanket on Krishnadas again, and this happened all night. And then Maharaj would just, it was really, if you read the journey home, there are more than 50 pages just talking about his experiences with Kanshram Baba. Kanshram Baba would have a bucket of water, and that's to bathe his deities. So he was old, so Krishnadas wanted to help him, but so he would hold the bucket for him. But Ghanshyam Baba wouldn't. He would cry and he would say that this is the only service I do for my deities. Please don't take it away from me. So, but Krishnadas said, I want to help you. I want to serve you. No, no, no. This is the only service I have. Please, please. I'm very fallen. I'm very fallen. Um, so they decided that one end Ghanshyam Baba would hold, and one end um, Krishnadas would hold. So that's how they would have their experiences. Then Radhanath Swami heard about Prabhupada coming to Vrindavan with some of his American and European disciples. And that was very nice because Maharaj had already met Prabhupada before. Um, so, and Maharaj said that he saw these disciples, they would have good food, they would have jalebis, they would have rasmalai and everything in Vrindavan. And Maharaj thought that they're not really very motivated in their Krishna conscious journey. So he would think like that, but then he would think that I shouldn't judge anyone. That's wrong. And then next day he heard Prabhupada talking about Yukta Vairagya in his lecture, and he said that this mic, Prabhupada was giving this lecture, that this mic, if I'm talking about Krishna, then this is Krishna consciousness. This is Krishna conscious. But if I'm doing Prajalp, then this is not really Krishna conscious. And then that shattered what Maharaj's conception about the disciples were. That these Americans and Europeans, they've given their lives to Prabhupada and Krishna, and in service of Krishna. And even if they're having sweets, what's wrong in that? So he had these experiences, and then he met Prabhupada. He told him that I've decided I'll never leave Vrindavan. Anyway, so his visa was coming to end. He was coming to get expired. So at that time, there was this. It was long after his visa was expired. He was still in India, but then this officer was chasing behind Krishnadas, and he was literally running behind Krishnadas, and Krishnadas was running behind. It's pretty graphic how Maharaj describes it. They were running, and he was chasing Krishnadas in the streets of Vrindavan, and Maharaj, he comes to this temple and he's praying to Krishna that I don't want to leave Vrindavan. I'm in love with this place. I'm in love with the Brajvasis, and the Brajvasis are asking this officer not to take Krishnadas because they've accepted Krishnadas to be one of themselves, and they don't want Krishnadas to leave either. So Maharaj is praying in front of the deities that I don't want to leave. I believe it was the Radha Raman temple he was praying. Some say it was Radha Vallabh temple. So he was praying near the deities, and suddenly he experiences that this giant beast. At that time, Vrindavan was not very developed. There were no roads and nothing, no cars there. Maharaj would describe that throughout the day there was just one bus which would come, and the bus driver would never wear slippers, and that bus would take you back to Delhi to Vrindavan. So that's all as far as the public transport was. So this wild beast, he comes and he chases, and he takes he bites Krishnadas, and he takes him out of the temple. And after a couple of hours, when Krishnadas opens his eyes, he's in excruciating pain, and the doctor sees him, and then the doctor tells the officer that he has been bitten by a wild dog and he's got rabies, so he can't leave Vrindavan for at least a month. So Maharaj's prayers were answered, that he got some more time to stay in Vrindavan. And then later, when Maharaj finally he actually had to go back to the west. So he went to the New Vrindavan, West Virginia temple, and there were experiences with him over there. The first service he was given was by the temple authorities was that he had to remove weeds from the fields. But Maharaj said that that's violence. I can't pull weeds out. And then this temple, his authority, he started preaching to Maharaj that in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna had to kill his own family members, so you must. And then Maharaj, he would, so what he would do is he would put his mouth closer to the weeds and he would chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra while pulling the weeds out, so that the weeds at the time of death, they would get the opportunity to hear Krishna's names. So that was the first service. The next service, he was given a gun, and uh, the temple commander said that there are a lot of groundhogs. You know what groundhogs? They're animals, and there are a lot of groundhogs in the cornfield. So you have to kill the groundhogs with the gun, and that was like a shock for Maharaj. But he did not argue, because he knew that if he argued, he would have again had to listen to a lecture on Bhagavad Gita. So then, um, and he said, even if one corn gets eaten, it's on you. So anytime he would see a groundhog, he would run behind him and chase him. He wouldn't use the gun, because Maharaj was just so, he was just so compassionate. So he would talk about his experiences with this oxen Bhisham, who would listen to no one. He would do nothing for anyone. So this oxen Bhisham, he was given this oxen. So all so there were hills. So Bahula, one, the Brahmachari ashram was the place, and then he was given this bull, and he was asked to get dead the uh, the branches which are, so the dry branches from the woods, and get that for making for used for cooking, wood for cooking. So this oxen, but this oxen wouldn't move an inch. So all this while, Maharaj started preaching to this oxen that how you should serve devotees, how you should, be compassionate, be helpful to others, and he would talk, because that was the only devotee association he would get. So he would preach to this oxen, and this oxen became merciful to Maharaj, and it finally started helping Maharaj. So Maharaj would get wood on this oxen, and they would get it back to temple for cooking. And then the only time Maharaj would sleep was then Maharaj became the pujari of Radha Vrindavan Nath, and the only time he would sleep would be between time between the offerings. And because Kirtananda Swami, he asked, Prabhupada asked him that, told him that we should have all night kirtans. So in the night, Maharaj would do kirtan, all night kirtan, and then it would be a mile long walk, trek up on the hill, and he would serve the deities. And then it was so austere living there that everyone during winters, they would have to break ice, and they would have to Maharaj would have to take baths multiple times in a day. So all these experiences, I think it's time. So we should. I had a lot of pastimes from New Vrindavan, but it's time. So I think we should stop here. But I would conclude by wishing all of you a very happy Vyas Puja. So these experiences of Radhanath Maharaj, they tell us how special he is, and how he's just not he's actually a person Bhagavad. He's we so grateful that a personality like Radhanath Maharaj is, we are born on, we are existing in an era where great personalities, great Bhagavats like Radhanath Maharaj are on this planet to bless us. And we can really learn a lot about Maharaj. Maharaj's mood is all about devotee care, about compassion, about giving to others, being very sensitive, being very caring, and his absorption, his love towards Krishna. Just small narration. He was once sitting in Eco Village, or it was in Belgaum, and he was sitting and he was absorbed in kirtan, and he was sitting under a big mango tree, and a really big mango fell on his head, and there was a bump on his head. And after the kirtan, the devotees, they showed Maharaj that you have a bump on your head, and then Maharaj said, how did that happen? And then they told him that big mango fell on your head, and Maharaj said that I didn't even realize. So that was his absorption. Braj Bihari Prabhu talks about how he was the personal servant for Maharaj for 3 days, and Maharaj entered his room in Chowpatty, and he was just dancing like how gopis, they dance for Krishna. So he was dancing because he thought there was no one around. So he was just turning around, and he turned around and he saw Braj Bihari Prabhu behind, and he was very shy and he was very embarrassed. And then Braj Bihari Prabhu asked him if he would take his breakfast, and Maharaj said yes. So after I have some course to do, and after that, sure. So he went inside. He There was the renovations were happening, so the keyhole was pretty wide to see. So Maharaj was doing kirtan. So 8 a.m. Maharaj was doing kirtan. After half an hour, he again went inside, and again Maharaj was absorbed in kirtan. 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. till 1 p.m. Maharaj was all by himself. He was just doing kirtan, and that's all. So as far as his absorption, his love towards Krishna, it's it's just y- we don't have words to describe how much he loves Krishna and how much he's absorbed. Maharaj was down with dengue, and he was so unwell that he was delusional, and he was not in his consciousness, and all he was speaking was, he was in his broken voice, he was talking about the various demons Krishna killed. And the devotees thought that in his semi-conscious state, if he's talking about Krishna, how much absorbed he would be in his full consciousness when he would talk about Krishna. And then unlimited pastimes. There's in Ramcharitamanas they say Hari Hari Ananta, Hari Katha Ananta, Kahe Viti Suni Sab Santa. So there are unlimited pastimes of Krishna, there are unlimited pastimes of Srila Prabhupada, and there are unlimited pastimes of Guru Maharaj. I would like to conclude here with this prayer at all of your lotus feet, that you please bless me, that I I'm aspiring for his lotus feet, that I get to I get his shelter and his grace in this lifetime. You please pray that I can call myself as the servant of his servant, and perfect my life in that way. So today is his Vyas Puja. Happy Vyas Puja, everyone. Please pray for me, and please be absorbed. There are a lot of services in temple, and this is my selfish prayer to you, that please pray for me, that I become his disciple in this lifetime. Vansha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namo. Thank you so much. Any questions, suggestions, feedback, or comment? That How come you don't have a question today, Mataji? Okay, so we would like to end here. Thank you so much. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Shri Prabhupada ki jai, His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga, Jagat Guru Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you so much, Mataji.